Ahoy, ho, gentle people. Um, Here we are. There's something wrong with my chair. Doesn't matter. I need to fix it. Sorry. Okay, here we are. So the beer for tonight. By the way, can you hear me? Can you see me? Is everything with the video and the audio? Is it okay? Please let me know. This tonight the beer is from Pohjola. I have made a video of at least one, sorry, probably two videos on my beer channel of their beers, and this is actually that I did not make that scratching there, so it was made by the artist who made this. And this is something called Cozy Nights Vanilla Porter. Oops. There we go. And the artwork is that for the entire brewery, for all their labels, it's done by the same person. And there's a porter, and it's vanilla porter. The vanilla is not very prevalent, but it's still there, and it's 8% alcohol by volume. And it's black as porter would be. So good. I had that was the actually this bottle is something that you cannot get in Finland. We went to Estonia, to Tallinn, Estonia. The brewery, the Pohjola brewery, is in Tallinn, Estonia, quite near to the uh, harbor. It's like on the old, some old Soviet era industrial zone in the docks, in the docklands near the the ferry terminals. It's just 3 hour boat trip, 80 kilometers or so from Helsinki to Tallinn. And as you can see, that I can actually use my hand now. The it some nerves are still doing funny things on two of my fingers, my pinky and ring finger. It's doing really weird things. The nerves there. Of post surgery, but the surgery was okay. So Stefan, let's put him there. And it's Bertil. Bertil was actually with us. I thought I haven't had the time and the energy to to take the pictures from my phone to my computer, so I could show you those pictures. However, we went to the brewery. We had a tour of the entire building. You know, we saw all their entire facility where they had their hops and their grain in the room, and all the and then there were these barrels, oak barrels, which were where they make these, which is the final phase of their cellar series um, beers, where they, for example, put their beers in whiskey casks. And one of the weirdest things I found was a Pinot Noir. Basically, is a barrel aged. First, they brew the beer, and then they put it in. Oh, I've forgotten I've forgotten which. It's probably some Bordeaux wine casks for 1 year, and then they put it in some South American sherry casks. I think it may have been Spanish or Mexican sherry casks. They transferred from brew a red wine cask 1 year, and then sherry cask 1 year. That's weird. I tasted that one in Tallinn, and I did buy one bottle of that particular brew, and then from actually a Finnish liquor store, I found and that Pinot Noir, it's like 13.5% alcohol, and I actually found a dusty bottle which they had only one left from a liquor store in Finland, just the other day, earlier this week, which was an Estonian from a small brewery, an Estonian imperial stout, 18% alcohol by volume. It's crazy. Okay, but for today's video, the point here is that trans women do not have a biomedical advantage in elite sports, says a Canadian. Let's see. Let's work. Um, a Canadian report says, which is an in-depth review of all existing scientific literature published between years 2011 and 2021 in English regarding trans women in elite sports. And there's very little evidence to that seeks to there's very little evidence that would seek in the first place to identify the advantages of male puberty or the remnants of male puberty in trans women. It usually what thus far it typically focuses on suppression of testosterone for trans athletes. There are no limits on how high the testosterone levels can be for trans men. So, I will go into the reports in a moment, but this report mentioned concludes that trans women who have undergone gender affirming healthcare, suppressing their levels of testosterone, have no biological advantage. Many people who are even mildly toward, don't really know their stance, but are leaning towards the anti-trans side of the story, say they cite the bone density and uh, lung capacity. Trans women have bigger this and that, but it it's not these differences do not exist. Well, they do, but they in this case, these differences are so minute that they do not matter. They're so small that they are insignificant. So, uh, and this study also it unequivocally clarifies unequivocally that there is absolutely no biomedical factors that would pose a threat to cis female um, athletes uh, in elite sports or even grassroots sports. Okay. Okay. Here it is. E Alliance, that research hub for gender plus equity in sports. Okay. There's I will post this link in the description box down below, so you can go and read it yourself. It's 84 pages, including appendices. So, okay, where is the? Ooh, I do not have the. Oops, wrong. Okay, here we have it. Okay, so it's here. Okay, so basically, it's an in-depth review from all peer-reviewed articles or syntheses of academic literature, including meta-analyses from in reputable academic journals, grey literature or non-academic literature was not included if it provided a summary. Um, uh, sorry, grey literature like or non-academic was included if it provided a summary of empirical data. So anything without empirical data, anything that did not have uh, anything that did not have empirical data or wasn't in a peer-reviewed journal was not included because those were considered not those were not considered reliable enough. Um, yeah, it says singers would have an advantage. They tend to have large and strong lungs, but yes, but there's much more to singing than just uh, lungs. It's technique and skill. Because Floor Jansen from Nightwish can is good enough to be able to sing the fucking phone book. Literally. I can play a video later. Um, so then there's the question of non-binary and intersex athletes. This, as stated, this concentrates on or is focused in the population of trans women or feminine athletes in sports. Um, there, the opponents of inclusion, anti-inclusion people, they tend to cite these uh, perceptive, the perceptions that trans women would have um, uh, as a source of perceived unfairness. With however, there's medical interventions like estrogen, estrogen supply, testosterone suppression, and genital reassignment surgery or GRS or gender reassignment surgery. But nowadays, the International Olympic Committee has the stance that the trans athlete would have to wait 2 years after the gender reassignment surgery. Its point is the sexual dimorphism between AMAB and AFAB, assigned female at birth, assigned male at birth, and testosterone measures at the boundaries that are defined in elite sports on an international level, in elite sports, these testosterone limits and so forth, they are from the International Olympic Committee. Everything that all sport that is under the International Olympic Committee are subject to these limits and regulations put forth by the International Olympic Committee in 2004. I think the original came in 2001, and then an update was there was some action on that in, I think, in 04 or 06, somewhere along those lines. Mid 2000s, there were some updates to these regulations put forth by the International Olympic Committee. And there is what they do not, but what they also forget conveniently is, for example, um, the lean body mass that estrogen tends to reduce, both in cis and or causes the smaller in comparison to cis men for cis women, and it also causes this reduction of lean body mass in transgender women when they use testosterone suppression and estrogen supplementation, as mentioned here. Some research findings in the biomedical area are inconclusive to some degree, but in the 10-year review of all peer-reviewed science says that there is no difference to speak of or advantage to speak of. Advantage held by trans women athletes. The studies which make conclusions on pre and post HRT advantage held by trans women athletes have used either cis men or sedimentary trans women as proxies for elite trans women athletes. So they have been compared in order to the findings that are inconclusive have compared the results when these findings that they have done to determine whether or not trans women have an advantage pre and post HRT. They compared them to cis men. How can you deduce an advantage to cis women when you compare the results to cis men? You can't. So these groups, as it says here, these group references are not only inappropriate for the context, but produce conclusions that cannot be applied to elite trans women athletes. Yes, these results results that are inconclusive at best cannot even be applied on what they were on the cases that they were wishing to achieve. Then there's the sociocultural aspects, and these researchers, the research in this field, argue that social factors contribute to the performance advantages to a far greater extent than does testosterone. And we all know, we've all seen on my channel and on the news why that is. When we observe the society around us, we understand. Every sensible person, when they just open their eyes, look around, they will understand. Okay, and here are their inclusion criteria. Um, Primary research or synthesis, review great literature if only if the final evaluation or report was on empirical data, um, if it was about, or if it was commonly um, about rules in place worldwide, mainly what I was especially and in particular the rules from uh, the International Olympic Committee, which is or has been for the past century or so at least the highest authority on um, this sort of rulings. And if a sports union or a national union refuses to comply with the with international uh, agreements, they have no business coming to competitions or tournaments that are would be under the roof or umbrella of International Olympic Committee, and this would include um, this would include obviously in the past year year and a half year and a half where Russian athletes have been excluded uh, due to the human rights violations and the war crimes performed by the Russian military and endorsed by the Russian government, the Russian federal government. And obviously, some sports unions, international sports unions, have pre pre Ukraine war, they have decided to exclude Russian because of doping. They be using testosterone and many other things. Yes, Bowie. Yes, their 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 guidelines are and bans do little, but they do they do things. They don't do nothing. They have an effect on many things, but it might seem as if it has no effect, but there we have it. Okay, key findings. Often severely limited. Yes, the sample sizes are incredibly small. Um, because and there is also the fact that there's a lot of great literature going about in this, and there are discussion articles, commentaries not presenting if there's no empirical or theoretical research in it. So almost no study is examining the effects of testosterone suppression on trans women do so among trained athletes. They do among uh, amateur athletes or grassroots athletes, uh, not like elite, as in world championships, uh, Olympics, and so forth. Uh, there is little um, uh, these are the downsides here really on the athlete's performance. Um, the sample sizes are small for obvious reasons, but they could from 10 years they could make a reliable analysis. Uh, and here, finding three available evidence indicates trans women who have undergone testosterone suppression for in brackets for sufficient amount of time um, have no clear uh, advantages over cis women in elite sports. Here are the um, higher blood level, red blood cell levels go down within the first 4 months of HRT. There is no basis for advantage conferring by bone size or density. No difference basically, other than achieved through height. Yeah, so the height might have a minimal to non-existent effect on this one. And elite athletes, as it says here, are taller than average across genders. That is, if you really go and look at how tall the professional cis women are in what is it, the pole jump, the high jump, in sprint and long distance running, and so forth and so forth. Trans women who are pre-testosterone suppression still have a lower body mass, LBM, cross-section area, and strength than cis males on average. Not all, but most. This indicates that there's this even diminishes the what do I call it? The perceived differences. Okay, so and even non-athletic trans women had a significant reductions in LBM, CSA, and strength loss within 12 months. And should be noted that this 12-month threshold was arbitrarily defined, obviously, because there your comment is not showing. Okay. Let's go. Oi. Oops. Where can I have you? Where can I have your comments back? Up. For some reason, I can see it here when I go to the studio. Religious bricks don't understand science and simple physiology. They go to their porn book or Bible for their facts and evidence, which it's more about discrimination and hate, precisely. OBS up. Okay, so as I was saying, the changes, as it says, is arbitrary, and there is no. It's arbitrarily defined, and no significant studies examine the rates of LBM CSA or strength reduction later on over time. But this is something that I know for a fact to be happening after the first 12 months. From personal experience and from what I've had discussions with um, other trans women and what I've read, it's a well-known, well-established fact that the changes continue after this 12-month period. When it comes to your, shall we say, your body composition, or you know, the proportions of fat, muscle. The places where the fat is. For example, boobs can take a number of years to like with cis women, the trans boobs can take a few years to form to the or come into the size and size and shape that they eventually end up in. Uh, could take up to 2 to 3 years, maybe. Who knows? The body lives. Cisgender people's bodies live. Cis women's boobs change. Uh, Ass changes. Big, 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 big and skinny, and so forth. Okay. Sociocultural findings were quite interesting too. Uh, Number one, they had in the study was that biomedical studies are overvalued in sports policies in comparison to social sciences studies. Um, because literature shows that sports policies, um, implementation, and people who wrote and apply them, consequences for athletes, and the debates they frame, and we've seen all over the internet, because plebes want to be important, uh, is constitutive of a social hierarchy of knowledge. And within some sciences are discredited to the benefit of others. So let's where are we here now? Okay, and these people, let's say conservatives, plebs, who they exclude certain types of knowledge from the restricted definition of scientific, and it makes it possible for sport governing bodies, like for example, and including the state govern the state governments in the U.S., like Florida, Texas, Oklahoma, and so forth. There are some really really ugly developments, by the way, in Florida, which I'll talk about in another video. It makes it possible for these governing bodies and the state authorities to obscure the power relations at play in the creation, maintenance, and legislation of these regulations. And there are obviously troubling links between some researchers, sport organizations, and third organizations with anti-trans agenda. And some organizations use science strategically. Basically, what this wants to say is that they cherry pick science to support to draw or to support solely and uncritically this data to support their own claims, which is something that we've seen in politics and flat earth and shit. And often by certain organizations, these pieces of this cherry picked science pieces are used strategically and solely to benefit from that for some reason. I cannot fathom the it's horrible. And only certain biomedical factors are taken into account under the mandate of fairness in elite sports. So, in the name of fairness in elite sport, they justify cherry picking, and then despite strong evidence that uh, financial uh, financial and material resources, i.e., infrastructure, equipment, nutrition, time to train, higher salaries, are are associated in advantage in sport rather than biomedical biomedical factors which really don't exist or support their yeah. So this whole thing goes back to early 20th century, obviously, with the International Olympic Committee and so forth, and many trans inclusion policies often use arbitrary bounds. Uh, as I said, they don't have any evidence to back it up. These federations, elite sports federations like FIS, like International Skiing Skiing, the International Skiing Organization, etc. Football, ice hockey, and so forth. Um, Often apply uh, none, one, two, three, or more of the following criteria based mostly on their own perspectives and ideologies. This ideology and perspective based. Gender declaration, gender marker, letter or just during registration. Stable gender identification for 2 years or 4 years. Hormonal level of uh, hormonal level not specified. 5 or 10 nanomoles per liter of testosterone uh, in serum, in a liter of serum. Uh, Request for therapeutic use, exemption, physical and morphological criteria, medical file or medical appointment. Of these that I can remember off the top of my head, what the International Olympic Committee uses are, I think it's gender marker, stable gender identification for 2 years, hormonal level of 10 nanomoles of testosterone per liter of serum for trans women. I can't remember what it was for trans men. Uh, and then possibly therapeutic use exemption 2. And many sports organizations circulates, as well as state authorities, the myth about trans women that are often transphobic, harmful, and violent. Obviously, for example, that trans women overwhelm uh, women's sports when they are in fact underrepresented in sports, and especially elite sports, for obvious reasons. All that trans women are cis men in women's clothes. This still goes around in sports, unfortunately. Dangerous misunderstanding of trans women's identities and experience directly linked to trans women's decreased safety, especially in such highly gendered spaces as sports. And obviously, there is cis sexism, transphobia, transmisogyny, and overlapping systems of oppression that need to be recognized and addressed for trans women in order for them to be able to participate safely in elite sports, including national For example, national and state championships, and international competitions and tournaments like world championships and the Olympic Games. The first trans athlete was, of course, Laura. I've forgotten her name. The Lauren something. The one the Kiwi weightlifter in the most recent Olympic Games, and she failed miserably, unfortunately. But that's how it sometimes goes when you are under the pressure she was in at the time. I would have, no matter how good I was, I would have failed miserably in her situation. Just the nerves. Okay, and this is this funding number 4 here. That's let's have a look. Okay. Mm, here we have it. Okay. Despite the unavailability of the exact prevalence of trans women in the population, it's trans people are transgender people are about 1%. Yeah, Laurel Hubbard. Yes, thank you very much, Peter. Uh, so transgender people are about 1%, so somewhere between half a percent to 1.5%. So we can take the median and say it's 1%. Let's say half, and let's presume that it's half and half trans men and women. So we can say about half a percent of the general population are trans women. But that is only an estimation. There's no exact statistics. Um, this study can reliably conclude that trans women are systematically underrepresented in terms of participation and results. This is something that is quite should be blatantly obvious to, unfortunately, to everyone, that on population level, trans women experience living conditions which are the results of downward social mobility and discrimination, including restricted access to and or experience of discrimination of vital spaces, i.e., housing, healthcare, work, public space, and so forth and so forth. And in qualitative studies, trans women have reported significant barriers in returning to sports after transition. And they're not monolith. Of we trans women are not monolith. We have there's racism because the most vulnerable group of people in adult population, well, okay, in any age, are trans women of color. Trans women of color are in the most vulnerable position in society. In Anyway, in Africa, trans women, okay, people of color are the vast majority in sub-Saharan Africa, as well as North Africa, and there they could be considered people of color. I think, at least in sub-Saharan Africa. And in sub-Saharan Africa, last time we talked about the case of Uganda. The Uganda is uh, just passed the horrible legislation making it criminal to just merely existing as merely the mere existence of trans people, gender diverse people, and all LGBTQ plus people was made illegal. Even there, the trans women are in the most vulnerable position. Ableism and systems of oppression that should be addressed for trans women to be able to fully experience inclusion into the sports world in both grassroots and elite sports. Okay, and trans women diversity is also reflected in their transition journeys. Diverse incomes, access, and desires in effect what medical gender affirmation process can might participate and at what stage. And I also had an interview of with an article with from gendergb.com with a trans female athlete named Paula Griffin. Football for people in America, soccer. Okay, so it's quite a long, it's quite a long enough to not for me to not include this interview in this um, uh, live show because it's gonna take quite a long time. Okay. Okay, let's okay. Now the stream is updated. You can, if you refresh the page, you'll find the link to the article. Link to the article, or not article, the study. The study there. And check the links in the description box. Leave me a like. Leave me a like. Don't forget. It would really help me a lot if you could leave me a like and share this article, this stream, because obviously the stats that went, you know, the viewing time in hours went down when I was gone for a while. Um, just 4 months ago, my viewing time was close to 50 hours a month. And now it's just nine point something, so it's just a fifth of what it was just 4 months ago. Even though the um, subscriber count is up. So let's see. Let's see if I can get. Anyway, about singing and being and having the lungs. Um, okay. Okay. Let's see. Let's get that one.
kan er een gevoel aan verbinden, dan denk ik dat ik inderdaad iets kan zingen wat je hopelijk voelt.
Wacht even.
So the commercial phone book
Ja, Jeroen heeft al heel
from number A.
Letter A.
Letter A.
Amerongen.
Ongedierte, bestrijding rent ook keel. Onink, 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 ons genoegen, muziekvereniging. Oost antieke klokken, Oosterhoorn, Oosterhoorn, Oostlander. Open atelier Amerongen.
There we go. Hey Nimron, what's up? And Floriansen is, by the way, like 1.9 meters tall, or even something like that. 1.9 meters, and she's got the build. So she sings better than many cis men half her size. And by the way, she's not trans; she's cis woman. I'm currently very pregnant. That's boxing at its best. Yeah. Can I correct your title? Shitty people have no sport, no place in sport. Transfer or not? Yes, shitty people do not. I do wholeheartedly. I do wholeheartedly agree with you, Nimrod, that shitty people have no place in sport. You're very much correct, but you can share your opinion. That's whether or not the difference here is whether or not I care. I do care, obviously, but whether or not I'm gonna do anything about it, well, that's a different thing. Wow, it's been 55 minutes already. By the way, that person there was with me in Tallinn. We have some nice pictures, and we have a picture of us having strudel with vätil or pancakes and so forth. And I managed to find some huge can of lefe, and every other place had lefe on tap. Yeah, I do agree with you, Nimrod. And whatever, almost every single thing that Governor DeSantis does harms trans people. And there are trans people fleeing, escaping Florida as of right now. I came across a woman who just became homeless, a trans woman who just basically lost her home because of DeSantis. She can no longer get Social Security, her medication. Her kids will have hard time going to school. It will make her kids will make it for much more, legally, much more difficult for her kids to go to school in that local area. Something like something to the extent of her marriage being nullified because reasons. And DeSantis and shit, but I'm not going into that. That is a different stream. Not today, please. So, oh yeah. Do we have anything interesting going on in Discord? Please go to my. If you aren't or haven't joined already, please go to my Discord. Another thing that I must address, um, in May, it is possible that I there will most likely there will be a recorded episode on Friday the 26th, because I'm going on a trip on Saturday, and I want to be prepared and sleep well, because I'm going to London for a few days to a private concert of a Mexican rock band called The Warning. I have their I have a beanie, so I'm going to see them in London in the end of May. They're in Europe anyway. They are touring with Muse. They are opening for Muse on on their European tour, which they did in North America already, and then now next in Europe. And they are going to several European gigs like Rock am Ring, Rock im Park in Germany, and some festival, download festival in the West Midlands in England. I think somewhere southwest of somewhere southwest of Nottingham, and then they have their private gig in London. So I have a ticket. I paid 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 for quite a number of euros for it, but it's worth it. Okay, but I think it's time for me to go for today. Yeah, I've been here with Bertil and Stefan, of course, with me, Heidi, and Katja. And I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.